Good afternoon. My name is Brian Nadeau, Deputy Police Commissioner for the Public Integrity Bureau for the Baltimore City Police Department. Today we are going to release 6 body-worn camera videos from an incident which took place on December 25th, 2021 at approximately 4:19 p.m. Location is 4101 Crawford Avenue. On that date and time, Northwest District officers were dispatched to the aforementioned address for a family disturbance call. The caller, Baron Cole, calls 911 and tells the operator that he is calling for his mother, Geraldine Coe, who is stating that Baron is trying to kill her. He requests the police be sent to their home. We will play the 911 call, and then the first video you will see will be the first responding officer, Devin Galanis, who arrives and begins to speak with Baron Coe, who is on the front porch. Baron's mother, Geraldine Coe, and his sister, Carol Coe, are also at the residence and come outside. After a discussion with Baron Coe, Officer Galanis requests dispatch notify CIT. Baron is also carrying a bag with him, and you will hear the officers asking him questions about the contents of the bag. The officer asks Baron's sister, Carol, to come out of harm's way, which she does. The officer also asks Baron to assist his mother onto the walkway and attempt to get her out of the way. At the time, she has a walker. Additional officers arrive along with Sergeant Stephen Evans. You will hear Baron state he is armed. You will hear the officers relay over the radio that Baron has a knife, is armed, and has explosives. At the 9:22 mark of this video, after backup arrives, the video will skip ahead 9 minutes. At that time, you will see backup officers with a bunker, which is being used for officer safety purposes. At the 12-minute mark in this video, you will hear officers telling Baron to put the weapon down, and then you will hear gunfire. The officers will take cover and continue to give verbal commands until they finally are able to approach Baron and make the scenes secure, and the medics render aid. The second video we will show is Officer Woodward. In that portion of the video, which we are showing you, you will see Baron Coe on the ground after being shot, but you will then see him raise his gun up again. Officers again discharge their weapons. We will be releasing all 6 body-worn cameras to you today so that you can view all of them. Following our body-worn camera release policy, they have all been given to the U.S. Attorney's Office, the State's Attorney's Office, and the Baltimore City Office of Equity and Civil Rights. A reminder, as always, there is a 1-minute buffer at the beginning of each video that we will give you. Once the officer activates their body-worn camera, the video from 1 minute prior, which was captured, is now recorded. But the audio recording starts when the body-worn camera is activated by the officer. Therefore, you will see video for 1 minute with no audio. We will now show the video. I will caution you this video does take 23 minutes, but it gives an overview.
talk to you.
No, just let me talk to you. Happy holidays to you, bro.
Okay, happy holidays. What's going on?
Do me a best favor. Call for backup. There's going to be a situation.
What is that?
It's going to be a major situation.
What's that, sir?
Got a problem with the United States government.
Okay.
And the best people.
What's in the bag?
Best people to take them.
What's the bag?
Huh?
What's in the bag?
It's a bad situation. That's why I'm telling you to call for backup.
34. Let me get some more years.
Good idea.
Can you step outside, sir?
I'm gonna let my mother talk to you to tell
So
her.
look him outside.
Okay, she police wants you to come outside.
That's 2101 across. You want to be back?
Okay, no. It's an emergency, man. And I'm telling them to call police. Very good. What's the situation?
34. Gentleman just moved out of his mind. He has a bag. I don't know what's in it. Seems like he's just not stable mentally. I'm trying to make contact with the female. She's not.
All right, I'll be back.
What's going on? Sir, what's going on, sir?
Okay, she'll tell you. Then my sister will validate.
You come down there. Can you put the bag down, sir?
Make sure you get back up here, please.
What's in the bag, sir?
Okay, she'll tell you. Go ahead.
Ladies, come here. Is she able to come down too, ma'am? Ma'am, in the break, come on. Come on, hands off. What's in the bag? What does he have? Does he know how to have any weapons?
I'm an owner of my handgun. You can check the
This is his sister.
So I need you to put, if that's a handgun, I need you to put it down.
It's not a handgun in the bag.
What's in the bag?
I'm a registered handgun owner.
Okay.
This is a dangerous situation, so I recommend for backup to be here.
Do you have a weapon in your hand, sir?
We'll wait for backup to get here.
Sir, I need you to put whatever's in your hand down.
And it's not gonna happen, Officer Correct. That's the best thing to do.
I'm asking you,
Wait for your police.
I'm asking you
Okay,
to put whatever's in your hand down.
not putting the bag down.
Ma'am, stand over here by my
It's
car.
not gonna happen.
Ma'am, go over by my car, please. Go over by my car. Ma'am, are you able to come towards me?
What you think I'm trying to do here?
Ma'am, ma'am,
No, because that's what you said. I'm
ma'am,
trying to get here.
are you able to come towards me, ma'am? Okay, ma'am, we're not worried about a coat. I need you to come here towards safety.
And that's the mother on the porch.
Do exactly what he said. I hope you understand.
I'm good, sir. I got one of the females out the house. There's another on the porch. She's elderly. She's going to need assistance. Gentleman's carrying something in his bag. He said he's a registered gun owner. He's telling me to call for backup. So I'm sure what he does. My gun is drawn, but he's forced it. So I need you to stand right there, sir. Okay, cool. All right, that's cool. You making it bigger than what it needs to be. Okay. Can you step here and talk to him? Okay. All right. Okay.
And I want that to be on record. And this has been an ongoing scandal for the last
Sir?
14 years. Actually 13. Going into 14, but it won't make it 14. As of today.
Okay. name, sir?
First name is Barry, last name is C-O-N.
No, sir, I have not.
In all of your experience at Northwest, you've never heard my name mentioned.
No, sir, I haven't.
How long have you been at that precinct?
Almost 3 years now.
Do you know the name Johnny Delgado?
No, sir, I do not.
He was the precinct commander prior to a couple of people. Basically, we got
Maybe CIT as well. Keep it as brazen on it and the same today situation. Doesn't have anything to say right now, but just take precaution. Come on, man, if you can come towards me. Keep the bag there, sir. Don't pick it up anymore, please.
Evidence, the officer's gun drawn at this time at the scene?
Yes, it is.
That's fine, sir.
This is where we jump ahead 9 minutes for the discussion.
You got eyes on me. Ma'am, can you come towards us, ma'am? Can you come towards us? Sir? Sir, he said it's a detonated explosive. Said he has knives, he has a gun in his dick. We saw it. Sir? Don't reach for it, sir. Sir, do not reach. Sir, don't do that. Don't put it down. Put it down. Yeah, back up, back up. He's there. Keep, put the gun down. Keep that, keep that.
Detect?
And you have a male.
He's still up. Watch the lady. Now you're taking gunfire. Still shooting. He is down, but you're taking gunfire. We cannot shoot because of the mother's in the way.
Requesting on 13, 2101 call for you to still take a shot. 2113 for shot fired to northwest.
Lay on your stomach, son. That man wins. Lay down.
Is that
Everyone okay? Everyone okay?
all right? Give me your medic. Give me your medical standby. All down. He's still down, but he's still moving, and he still has.
He just laid down.
We're still taking gunfire.
I see him. He's laid down, sir. I can't see what's in his left hand. His right hand is open.
All right, close it. Take the bunker, take the bunker.
Bunker up. You okay? I'm there.
Go ahead.
You got this. You need something, what you need? Scoot up, man. Scoot back. Sir, go in the house. Go back inside. Go back inside the house, sir. Go in the house. Everybody okay? Charles, you okay? Did you alright? Brother, you good? Rios, you alright? He's still moving. He's still moving. still moving. It's still moving. It's moving. All right. He's moving. He's moving. Watch out. Watch out. Please, sir. Get down. Please, sir. She good?
That's when he's raising the gun up again with his left hand. Sorry? You want the timestamp? 16:57. It's in the top right-hand corner. So, and of course, we're going to give you all 6 videos. We put these two together to kind of show overall what's happening. You'll see in the other videos some of the same thing. Unfortunately, because they're behind police cars a lot of the time, you know, the view is obstructed, but you'll see that when you watch it. Also to the question about did he have his gun drawn? Obviously, you can't see it on the video. You hear him tell the sergeant that he has his gun drawn, and then at one point, after we moved ahead 9 minutes, you see him with the gun out in front of him. So we're only going by what we're seeing and what we're hearing on the video. A couple of things to add. One, the gun, which was a Davis Industry 380, was determined to be inoperable by our firearms unit, meaning it could not fire. It was missing a firing pin spring. Two, you heard the officer when he was first there. About 5 minutes into it, he asked for CIT. Of course, that is trained individuals. You heard the communications asked if there's any CIT trained people working in the Northwest District. She also put out to citywide. No one responded before the incident unfolded. CRT, which is the critical response team, was not notified by communications. And also, you saw at the beginning, the sister was the first one that the officers assisted off the steps and got out of the way. The mother, because she was in a walker, at one point, Mr. Baranco brought her down onto the walkway and then helped her down the sidewalk and then moved back, always having the bag with him. At about 1,700 hours on the body-worn camera video, the sergeant, even though Mr. Coe was on the ground, still had the gun with him in the bag, goes up and extricates her from the situation to get her out to safety. Okay, we'll take any questions you have. If you have a question, if you could just either speak loudly or remove your mask, ask the question, and then you can put your mask back on.
We're going to start down here. Steve, we'll just go this way. So, any other questions? Is the left one is questions for officers we have?
Deputy, we're watching this video, and it's awfully traumatic, and it was traumatic, I'm sure, for some of the witnesses on that block, and of course the officers. Now, we heard, I think it was Officer Galanos, he said, Jesus Christ. When incidents like this happen, what concern do you have for the officers involved in circumstances like that?
So we have a health and wellness team here at the Baltimore Police Department. All individuals involved in any situation like this, any critical event, have to meet with our health and wellness folks. They meet with them, they talk to them. There's debriefing, counseling set up if necessary. We also contract with outside vendors that can assist them. As you can imagine, and you'll hear it on one of the videos, it's Christmas Day. Nobody expects this to happen. Nobody expects it to happen any day, but especially on Christmas Day. And you'll hear one of the officers talking about that on his body-worn camera video when you watch it. So it is traumatic. We do want to make sure that all of our officers get the proper counseling they need, walk through the process. It's called critical incident stress debriefing, to talk through it, to sort of them bring them back. At the time, we put everybody on administrative leave so that they can do that. And they stay in constant contact with our health and wellness.
I may be using the wrong terminology at this point, but you guys have reviewed the shooting and that kind of thing. You correct me if I'm wrong. It's classified now as a good shooting. If so, what makes it an appropriate action? I guess that's the terminology, good shooting. But
Right.
What makes this an appropriate action by the police officers?
So that determination has not been made. So what we do as an agency, one, State's Attorney's Office, of course, does a review. And so a State's Attorney has been assigned to the case to review. They get all the evidence, body-worn camera. They have access to the entire case file. They review it from a criminal standpoint. Internally at the department, we do an investigation with a special investigative response team, along with homicide. We will, at some point very shortly, have what we call a performance review board. That is sat on by the 4 deputies oversee it. Then we have members who come and present from communications, firearms training, a host of units at the department. And the Special Investigative Response Team will do a presentation as to the events. And the board, which is made up of the 4 deputies, will sort of walk through and make sure we're doing like a holistic view to make sure that policies were properly followed, that there's no additional training that we need to change in the department to make sure this either happens again or doesn't happen again, or if it does happen again, make sure it's correct. We review policies, we review the training of all the officers, and sort of walk through it. So that has not happened yet. Now, when the commissioner and I got here 2 years ago, that used to happen after the state's attorney's office gave a declination letter, which could be a year. We moved it to within 30 days, if possible, to make sure that we can do that, because the purpose is to review, to make changes if necessary for the future, right? And if you're doing that a year down the road, sometimes that's challenging. So we want to do it more quickly. So we will do that with this case as well, but this has not had any determination made to it. The investigation is certainly not complete.
Next, please.
My station wanted to ask, what is the current number of COVID cases in the police department?
We have 347 people are out on quarantine, and 263 people currently have COVID, and we're waiting for 84 tests.
Now, quick question. This is new. I mean, this is one-on-one questioning. We normally just anyway. The officer was talking to the guy. Took a lot of time. It seemed like it would have been no amount of time to get a rapid response negotiator. If that's the way to want it. There. But this wasn't a long drawn out thing, meaning in the sense of hours. The second question is, and this is an opinion, and you got the experience, it looked like it might have been a shot by cop, killed by cop scenario, because he kept saying it's going to get bad. So in your experience as a chief, I mean, obviously you got a lot of years to get there. Is that what you see? Because he was saying, you know, it's going to get bad, and the gun wasn't operable. Do you kind of feel that was the case?
Well,
That's an opinion.
yeah, it's really hard to judge an opinion on that. Obviously, you're correct. He had what he said was an explosive device, which turned out not to have any. It had the mechanisms to an explosive device, but it didn't have the actual explosives. It had the switch, the dead switch, etc., which was another concern here, right? Because we can't just go up to somebody when there's a potential bomb sitting next to them, which could have a timer, which he may know the time, and the officers don't know the time. So you'll notice there's a bit of time before they actually go up. It's because they're waiting to see if that device is going to explode or not, which it does not explode. If it had exploded, once the bomb text went through it, it did not have any explosive in it, but the rest of it was a bomb. So again, hard to know what's going through somebody's mind at the time. Obviously, he had a weapon. The weapon was actually loaded. It actually had a round in it. It was a licensed weapon. Whether or not he even knew the firing pin was missing, we don't know that answer yet. He is still in stable condition at shock trauma. So at some point, we may get to interview and find out. So I can't really give you an opinion to that. I would agree it sort of looks that way. But at the end of the day, sometimes I find that when you think you know what somebody's thinking, is exactly what they're not thinking. And I
understand that, you know, obviously you got a lot of experience. In response to Keith's question, your officers took the time to talk to them, and obviously got the folks out of the way, or tried to. You know, and even he was, but it's not always that case. Some people have oxygen, but your officer responsible. Do you, as the chief, as the commissioner, feel as though your guys did? Like Keith said, it's not a good call, but
right.
they did receive it.
So I will say the first officer there, as you saw, that's mostly the video we watched, was very concerned from the beginning as he was trying to get the mother and the sister out of the way. He did call for CIT. I will say all officers were trained. Had a 24-hour training that is conducted by our education and training. They did not have the additional CIT training, which is why he was calling for CIT or maybe the CRT team. They did not get there in time, but I will say it's easy after the event to look and see the time frame. It's hard when you're there. I assure you, if we interviewed them, they think that went by in 2 minutes. It goes very quick, although it does take a long time. And so the officer that we heard mostly talking here, as you heard on the radio, was doing a great job educating people as to what was going on, talking about the knife, talking about the weapon, talking about the explosives, talking about what he said, making sure that everybody there knew exactly what was going on. That's what we wanted to do. So I think from that point, we would say yes, that was procedurally what they should do. Now, by the time we dissect it all, will we use this for training? It's possible. Will we see things that might be wrong? It's possible. I don't know the answer to that question yet. We haven't done it yet. But that is the procedure that we use here as a department.
Do you mind giving us a proper spelling for Barron Cole and Jill D. Cole?
What?
Proper spelling for both? Barron and Jill.
Yeah, Carol's C-A-R-O-L, and it's C-O-E. And Geraldine is G-E-R-A-L-D-I-N-E, and again, C-O-E.
And the guy's name is what?
Barron, B-A-R-R-O-N.
The date of birth?
His date of birth is 5/29/62.
And do you mind telling us the potential charges he could face?
Yes, so he has been charged by the state's attorney's office with 5 counts of attempted, 1 count of attempted first-degree murder, 4 counts of attempted second-degree murder, 3 counts of assault first-degree, 1 count of a firearm used during a felony, 3 counts of second-degree assault, 4 counts of reckless endangerment, and 1 count of a handgun on a person committing a felony. Sorry?
Say your name is spelled one more time.
Sure. Brian, B-R-I-A-N, Nadeau, N-A-D-E-A-U. Deputy Police Commissioner.
Cole said they would need backup. How long did it take backup to show up when he first requested?
The first officer arrived at 4:36. The first backup arrived at 4:42. Hello, Jessica.
I have 2 questions. One, do you know, have police ever been called to his house before?
So, no, we have no recorded complaints at his house before.
And then my other question is broader. I know that you said the officer did call for additional CIT, CRT. But I mean, did the process play out as it should, or is it an issue of needing more people in these positions, or?
Yeah, so the CRT team is the critical response team. They're sort of like an enhanced CIT. They don't work 24/7, right? That's a team that works with areas where we're having issues with individuals that might have come in for calls. CIT trained officers are actually patrol officers working the street that have done additional training. Again, all of these officers were trained with a 24-hour training. They didn't have the additional, most of them were newer, didn't have the additional CIT training, which is why the officer immediately called to see if there was a CIT trained person. In the time frame this broke out, I mean, obviously you could hear Mr. Barron. I'm not sure that a CIT trained person would have had much more luck with Mr. Barron. Of course, we don't know because they weren't there, but Mr. Barron was sort of very irrational, obviously. His answers at the beginning certainly raised the suspicion of the officer, which is why he actually called for a CIT team member, and notified all the incoming officers that there were concerns about him. So I don't know as a CIT person would have done anything different than this officer did with his 24 hours of training, which he did the appropriate thing by trying to stay calm, stayed away from the house, tried to talk him down. You heard many times him saying, let's talk, sit down, stay back, try to keep him calm. I mean, the guy obviously had some concerns, which ended in this situation. But at the end of the day, I think we're going to probably find that that officer, did exactly what a more enhanced CIT person would have probably done.
I'm sorry, just one follow-up. It might be obvious if you're watching the video, but is it, when did officers first learn that he may be armed? Was it once they arrived at the house?
So you'll hear the officer asking him at the beginning, do you have a gun? What's in the bag? What's in the bag? Do you have a gun? Do you have a gun? The gun was actually in his waistband. At one point, he moves, and the officer sees it, and then he gets on the radio, and he calls back and says he has a gun. I see a weapon in his dip, which is the waistband, and he has an explosive, because he says, I have an explosive. So that's the point where they realize that he has a gun. They do know he has the knife, and they do know he has the bag, for which he says is a detonation device in it.
So my question was that, just to clarify, you said the gun that Mr. Barron had was inoperable.
Yes.
So I know we
So all the shots you hear on the video are from the officer. There were, the reason why that initially was put out that way is officers are required to give what we call a public safety statement, which is not to give a full debrief of what happened, but to let us know, one, is there somebody who's been shot? Two, who did the shooting? Three, are there any other suspects? It's really so that we don't have somebody fleeing the scene that we don't know about. All the officers, when they gave their public safety statement, indicated that he had fired, and neighbors indicated he had fired. So I think the reason that was put out on Christmas night was because that's what neighbors were saying, that's what everybody was saying. But at that point, we had not reviewed the body-worn camera video, which is our standard practice before we really put out any statement. I will say, watching the body-worn camera video, it would have been very challenging to decide whether or not he fired or not, because you can't see him a lot of the times because they're taking cover. So, we have to go by what the people tell us at the time. However, upon searching the location, when we determined that the gun that he had fired did not have a magazine in it, but only had one round in the chamber, it would have been next to impossible for him to fire that round. It would have ejected out. There's no way to load a round in. So once we were able to safely get to the weapon and determine that there was only one round in the chamber and have it examined, we knew that was possible. And then we sent it to the firearms unit to be checked. And of course, when they checked it, they also found out that besides not having a magazine, it also didn't have a firing spring.
So my question was, would it still made the noise that
No, it made no noise. No.
What's the current disposition of the officers?
Of the what?
Of the police officers? What's the current disposition of the 6 officers involved?
So they're still out on admin leave and working with health and wellness.
How influential do you think his mental health capacity would be with this case? There was Ricky Walker Jr., there was also Marcus Martin, also earlier this year. How influential do you think that's going to be his mental health? Does it have any component in this case?
Can you just remove the mask and say it one more time?
How influential will his mental health capacity be in this case? I know the charges were dropped last year for a similar situation by the state's attorney.
Yeah, I mean, that's a decision by the state's attorney's office once they do a full evaluation. It's hard to tell. Some people, we all have bad days, and some people have more bad days. And so it's challenging to understand that by just having very little interaction with him and only watching the video. I'm sure as the investigation goes on and he, eventually gets out of the hospital and he's either interviewed, certainly we'll, have a defense attorney we'll talk to. We don't know that he was receiving any type of treatment, but obviously I think we all listened to the 911 call and watching the video. Obviously there's some concern there, so we'll have to evaluate that with the state's attorney's office.
Did it start off as a behavioral health crisis?
No. So if you heard the 911 call is actually him calling for his mother, telling the 911 dispatcher that his mother is saying that he is trying to kill her. And when you listen to it, I know sometimes it takes once or twice to listen to those calls, but you'll hear him say, he's talking to the 911 dispatcher and saying, my mother said that I'm trying to kill her, right, Mom? Say something, Mom. Talk to the 911 dispatcher. And so it was dispatched as a call of a mother reporting that her son is trying to kill her, but he's actually one that made the call.
Okay, that's it for today.
Now,
Thank you, everyone.
the questions are, you're saying a lot of information here, and the young lady with 13 asked the question. You don't have time to know if the weapon is a play weapon.
Correct.
Will fire, don't fire, has a firing pin, all you know somebody who has a gun.
Correct.
We're not even questioning the bomb. If somebody has made a call that there's an issue, so now you already up, and I don't mean your person, but the level is a different level right now. It's not like they're having an argument or fight or with a knife. So we talked about QRT, the quick response team is SWAT. The other person is a negotiator, I take it, or somebody with additional training. They're two different teams. Am I
Right.
understanding right?
So there's a SWAT team that was called, never arrived before this all played out. We also have a hostage negotiation team which shows up when there's actually a hostage, which it wasn't in this case. The CIT trained person was called because the officer believed he was having a crisis. I will tell you, talking about the weapon, when you watch the other videos, you have to remember the officer that we watched today is on the right side of the house, right, down the street behind cars. The other officers, some of them are on the left side of the house, right, so further down. So if you can just picture a neighborhood, they're like 2 homes away from each other. When you see somebody raise a gun up and point it, and you hear somebody fire, it's very challenging out in an environment like that to decide whether or not that person's firing, somebody else is firing. Like, you see the gun come up pointing at the police officers, somebody fires. Once one person fires, unfortunately, the other people then hear the gun fire too. And so trying to make those split-second decisions so you don't get shot, the mother, who's right there, doesn't get shot. The sister had been moved out of the way, so she wasn't going to. But for a long time, until 5 o'clock on the body-worn camera, the mother is there. And so, the officers have a responsibility to protect the mother, protect the other officers. And as you heard, people were coming out of their homes, right? And so they're telling people, go back in your home, go back in your home. It doesn't take but one round of, if his gun was operable, to shoot, miss the officers, and go and hit somebody in the house. So it is a bit of a mindset for the officers to actually make that quick determination as to what's happening. And once you hear the gun go off, the officers see the gun up, and then at one point you see him raise the gun up again. Somebody shoots, they think he's shooting again. So, that's why you got to see, when you watch it, the span where the officers were is quite far. So it's not like we're all standing together and I can hear you shoot, I just see a gun, right? It's a span of space, and to make that determination is a bit challenging. So that's all things we will look at during our PRB, as to what was the distance, what did they hear, what could they have heard, and whether or not, the decision was appropriate or not at the time.
How long was it, Dad?
Oh. Wait, the time?
But he's still on the ground with a gun pointed in the air, right? That's
Yeah.
on the video.
Yeah.
So, like he said, it's like a justified, I don't call it justified, but it's still a concern. Is this,
Yeah.
okay.
All right. Thank you very much.